We're here. Hi. Is that okay? I know who you are. You're gonna be embarrassed today. You know that, right? So I got something here. So it's all good. Hey everyone, thank you for being here. And before I do the usual introductions, like who we are, I think we have something, for you to watch and understand who we are and why we're here. Should we begin?
Let's do it.
Welcome to AWE XR Expo 2024. Get ready to shift gears and zoom into the future of motorsport. Our panel of trailblazers will explore how XR technology is revolutionizing the racing world.
Darren Cox, the visionary behind GT Academy. Darren's expertise has reshaped the industry. Torsten, a C6 quadriplegic who redefines what's possible in motorsport. Stefy, founder of Inity Sports, is championing women in motorsport and sim racing. Finally, we have Yuksel, Executive Creative Director and partner at Dreamspace, whose expertise in creative technologies has led award-winning projects across branding, content, and digital experiences.
Buckle your seatbelts and dive deep into the future of racing, where technology and passion intersect to drive the industry forward. Let's begin.
All right. That's who we are, and I'm very lucky to be here in between these three phenomenal people. Actually, we call them trailblazers, and I asked my team to use that word wisely, and they said, the only person that we need to use that word wisely is you. So I'm humbled that I'm in between all of you that has so many incredible accomplishments in life, and here to talk about XR and see how that actually impacts our world of motorsports. I'm dabbling in motorsports, but all of you have been in it for all your careers, and you're an incredible, trailblazer on your own, driving with your hands and winning races. Let's kind of talk about your journeys a little bit, and shall we start from the godfather of XR, actually, in my opinion. I think without the headset, you put the first sim driver in a race car, and it's been on a movie, called Gran Turismo. And Orlando Bloom actually played you. I have one question I've been dying to ask. Did you have long hair?
No. or the abs as well. I didn't have the abs that he has. Thank you. Well, we had this crazy idea in 2005. I say I did, that we could take a gamer from their PlayStations and turn them into a real racing driver. And I see around the hall here and talking to you guys and talking to other exhibitors here that there's this big vision that everyone's got where XR is going. And I see the same sort of challenges that I had at that beginning. Back in 2005, nobody thought that someone using a gaming device could transfer those skills into real racing. So I've heard the phrase on the previous panel, MR, so I'm going to go with that. It was about mixed reality. We really took people that had never sat in a race car before and proved that everything they'd learned through the virtual world was completely applicable in the real world. So I'm claiming not only to be the godfather of gamer to racer, but also of mixed reality. So if I can put that on my LinkedIn by the end of this panel, that would be great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you don't necessarily need a device to kind of merge digital and traditional together. And I think you're one of the first ones that envisioned this and turned it into reality, and it made a Hollywood movie out of it. So.
Yeah, I think that's where all this started, right? The fact that we're sitting on this panel today is that technology did lag behind in motorsport in a way, and there's a lot of people probably here that don't realise the impact that using even digital twins in motorsport now is a massive thing. But it just wasn't before. No one made the link between the virtual and real world. They were two completely separate spaces. And over the last 15, 20 years, people have merged those two things. The Concorde, amazing supersonic aircraft, we've gone backwards with that technology now. They had a real simulator for that was established in 1974. Now, the first Formula One simulator wasn't delivered until 2004, 2005. So, other industries we can learn a lot from, and I think that's what I'm seeing today, is that we know our little space, but there's so much out there that shows me where the future technology for, all the amazing stuff that a lot of the public hasn't seen yet, needs to be showcased, and I think this is a great event to do that in.
I think that's what we're going to do today. So we have another trailblazer here,
Yep.
who's joining your passion and your professional experience of being 3-time world champion, motocross champion in
Yep.
the world, into a women-focused esports league. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, so to build on top of what Darren just said, the opportunity to go from a digital world to a real life world, it's very difficult for women, and DEI, in the industry. So we are trying to build upon that. So be able to gather the attention from people digitally is much more powerful than just at the races. So by doing that, we are creating a pathway to participation for women and minority, that they will not probably be part of motorsport otherwise. So the component of being digital, it's incredibly important in the industry.
I see.
I think both of the things that are linked there is the democratization of motorsport. And just for some context for those that don't know motorsport, a friend of mine in the UK is spending on his 11-year-old son. He thinks he's going to be the next Formula One driver. He's spending somewhere in the region of $120,000 a year on his 11-year-old son just to go racing. So the ability to buy a PlayStation and a headset or a PC and all the devices you need for that is significantly cheaper.
Yes.
So we are democratizing motorsport in this way because it's a very, very expensive sport to get into otherwise.
Speaking of, Torsten, beyond everybody and beyond everyone that has access to all of these, either devices at home or, vehicles for, made for able-bodied drivers, tell us a bit about your journey and what you've overcome throughout these years. And, you're a fascinating individual. We've spent a lot of time together,
So I'm somebody who likes to challenge my life insurance policy. And it means that I'm the world's only quadriplegic. That's a rescue scuba diver. I did 12 marathons in 12 months. I do just crazy stuff that I think my wife regrets every single time I try and do it. But the unfortunate part about being in a chair for 30 years is that nothing made me equal to able-bodied people until race car driving. Because the race car doesn't care that I'm in a chair, and nobody on the track knows that I'm in a chair unless they saw me before I got into the car. And to find a sport that makes me equal with able-bodied people is incredibly freeing and liberating. And so not only have I been racing, but I started a foundation called the Just Hands Foundation, which gets people who are in chairs behind the wheel of track cars so that they can experience the same thing. What we're also trying to do, though, is we are launching our own hand control system because right now, to be able to replicate the sim experience in the real world with the exact force feedback that a GT3 or GT4 car will give you does not exist. So we are coming out with that in the next couple months, which I'm super excited about. But it allows somebody who's in a chair, able-bodied people can hop into different cars and try out different setups very simply. We can't do that because of hand controls. So what Sim does for us is it allows us to test and try in a way that we would not be able to do otherwise the way able-bodied folks can do, which is incredible. And if you think about what Sim does, Sim replicates the real world. And if you have a very nice Sim, you get to feel the movement underneath you, but most of the time you don't. Well, we don't feel that anyway. I use my shoulders to feel the movement under the car under me. And so that actually makes the sim more perfect for disabled folks than it does for able-bodied folks. Because we're actually getting almost the exact experience that we would on track because we don't feel that movement underneath us. So that's why this is such an important thing for us, because it means that we can train on a level that even able-bodied can't do just because of sim.
That's awesome. To tie in that conversation today, we're going to discuss about immersion within sim. and the differences. And I'm an HPD instructor. I technically can teach anyone how to stay away from the walls at a track in anywhere in the country. I'm very active within the industry as well. So I run a small company, we're multiple offices in different countries, but doing a lot of back-end work for AR, VR development since, I would say, 2015. Some of you are going to recognize the Vuforia logo on top of those iPhones or phones that exist. And Corbin, yes, I used the video of you in a tank top. So, yep.
Can you talk about your time of being a Bond villain?
The Bond, yeah.
Because that is definitely, that was your career, right?
That is made with AI, so it's
got it. Okay.
We didn't get the AI.
That's an AI dude, but definitely, I've been deep diving into how XR could definitely look into this field a little bit more deeper beyond the headset as well. So that's what we're going to discuss today. So you talked about a little bit on how it feels with the sim, because definitely I think sim has proven the fact that it is a platform that can definitely translate a talent that has never ever driven a car before. And I think you mentioned that, right? One of your talents told you?
Yes. So we ended up doing a program called Screen to Speed, where we got women from all over the world first to qualify online on a game called iRacing. And then the top 20 in the world, we brought them to Las Vegas during the NASCAR Pennzoil 400 event. So NASCAR was happening around us while the girls were in the simulator competing. Oh. The winner of that competition, sim racing competition, then we brought her back to Las Vegas to test in a real Porsche Cup car. And the result was amazing because the girl didn't even have a driver license. So she only drove in the sims, but she spent so many laps in the sim by knowing that track and having all of the setup, exactly identical to in real life, that when she was there and needed to perform, we brought in, just to cover, the basic, a professional race car driver. And this professional race car driver, the function was a female to be a mentor to her. In 17 laps on the track, the gamer was only 2 seconds slower than the real race car driver. Oof. And that doesn't even have a driver license. So it continues to prove, the sim racing is a complete pathway from the digital world to the in real life world.
We never talked about immersion. At the time, I think Jan was training through the Gran Turismo. Obviously, we didn't have the tech that we have access today. Now, people actually build sim rigs that are equal to a cup car. $100,000 rigs and everything else. So to be able to create that immersion, and I know you mentioned, Torsten, about how it is so close to your real life experience because your body is reacting differently than everyone else. Immersion in, I think, sim is quite important for being able to take that experience to real life quality up a notch. So what I have done is prepared a video for all of you to be able to understand the differences between using a VR headset and looking at a monitor while you're doing sim training. In this video, I would like you to pay attention to my head movements. I've recorded every single race that I've done, and these head movements are the similar head movements that I actually replicate in real life while I'm racing at the track. So being able to use a headset to experience that is extremely immersive to me. Some people might say, hey, headsets give me headaches, or I get nauseous when I'm doing that. But after you pass that threshold, I think you get to a point.
As a race car driver, you're wearing a 3-pound helmet anyway.
Yeah.
So if you can't take that, if you can't take that weight, you probably shouldn't be racing a car.
Exactly. Plus, the challenges that we go through in the hot summer day race, right? 150 degrees inside the car with a fixed window. You have to be able to kind of handle this kind of stuff. So let's watch this video, and I just want you all, I don't know if anyone does sim work here and sim racing. It's awesome. We got some people. Some probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but definitely this video will give you an understanding, especially like my head movements will give you an understanding of how immersive VR sim racing is.
Go, go, go.
So right here you can see I'm just looking around to make sure that my head position is correct. In an open wheel vehicle like this, I can actually lean forward and see my wheels and look around as much as I want. You can't do that by looking at a monitor. Again, same thing. It doesn't matter what type of car that you're driving on sim. You can literally just turn your head around and look into the apex entry points, exit points, which helps you enhance your experience. And here's a racing scenario. So I'm constantly looking around, making sure, especially if you're doing multiplayer racing, there are rules like real life. You cannot hit your opponent. And actually, I did a little oopsie here. Take that guy out. But you know, you have to definitely keep in mind your surroundings. Take a look at your opponents, where they are, and adjust your position at the track at all times. And VR definitely allows you to do that.
For context, in the real world, you are allowed to hit other people.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially NASCAR.
Yeah.
Yes.
So versus a setup like this, that definitely, we still have some stuff to show. Setup like this that would probably cost almost an equal to a race car. You know, you would have to look around, or obviously this. Can we get some audio?
It's got some wear and tear, but it's super comfortable compared to my old chair. There's only one problem.
He's pretty funny. Anyway, you know, my point is, I think, you know, VR sim definitely is kind of pushing the boundaries one step up a notch. What are your takes on that?
I think the video talks for itself, really, in terms of the interaction. I think there's a number of different areas. I know we're going to come on to it, but if you really want the immersion in a fixed screen, you're going to spend a lot of money, right? They're big, expensive screens. They got high refresh rates. And if you see the top sim drivers, they've got 3 of them, right? So they have 1 in front, and to get that immersion you're just talking about, they have 2 at the sides to do what you were doing, which was making sure that they can see what's going on either side. So I'm all about accessibility, making sure as many people come into the sport as possible. So, you know, I know there's discussion about affordability of headsets, but in that context, it's actually cheaper at the high end than it would be normally to have, you know, top-of-the-range monitors with the right refresh rates and 3 of them surrounding you to get that immersion.
Speaking of, I mean, this is my setup at home, which is not a very expensive setup. Still, you know, so if you want decent feeling in your haptics, you definitely need some good steering wheel setup. But, you know, the reason why I don't have a big monitor setup is because I'm constantly on the headset. And a $200, $300 headset is more than perfectly enough for being able to get that immersion level. What about your
Yes, I was actually
team?
going
Yep.
to say that in our movement, you know, all of these women that compete in our championship online, the top of the ranking, they are all using the headset.
Headset.
Yes, so it proves, once again, this is data, you know, like, so that be able to be that immersive, it gives you the opportunity to get to be better, you know, like at the game, you know, like, and be able to compete in a different level. So 100%, I think the problem maybe, you know, that we have as an industry is that it's not promoted enough. So therefore people tend to copy, right? So if they see, even on the media or whatever, you know, like just a triple screen, they immediately assume, oh, that's the way to go, right? So as an industry, we can probably do much better to educate, you know, like, and show that there are other ways and it can be more affordable to be able to continue to get involved in this industry.
Yep. And
I think that's absolutely key in sim racing. Generally, you know, mass adoption is critical, and sim racing had the best thing happen to it and the worst thing happen to it at the same time during COVID. You know, there weren't any real sports happening, but we had the ability as a sport to switch into virtual racing straight away. So I was literally launching a media company in March 2020. So we'd spent all this money, got the best journalists, flew them to Australia for the first Grand Prix of the season, got a phone call from my guy that was down there saying, this race isn't happening. Now, I've just invested a huge amount of money in this brand. We're launching the first digital, first content, first Formula One brand, and there's no race. That was the Thursday. On the Sunday, we held a race online and completely switched. And over the next 16 weeks, we basically had the best launch we could have had because everyone was watching virtual racing at that time. The problem then became that we had this curve of interest in the sport, and then when real sport came back, it dipped off. But what's happened is people have stopped watching other people playing, and they're now competing themselves. Wow. So there is a massive bump in terms of people competing, and I think now's the moment for the industry here to get that mass adoption while people are either renewing their kit or actually coming into the sport for the first time, because we're seeing more first-time players and sim racers than ever before because of the boost that Formula One's had generally, but also the boost that COVID gave. But people don't want to watch someone else doing it, they want to compete themselves. So there is an opportunity in the space, definitely.
And Torsten, leave everything beside. Let's talk about inclusivity here a little bit. I think a lot of these, I've never seen a disabled sim setup. As soon as I look down, I see my legs moving. So.
Yeah, when we put on a VR goggle, I'm like, holy shit, my legs move. Because it's not designed for somebody in a chair. And that's okay, right? Because you can't develop for everybody, but at a certain point, it becomes a weird sensation to kind of go, look, I can stand again. But it is fascinating for me to do VR because the depth perception is exponentially better than with screen, right? And what we do is by inches next to cars, not, we need to actually know how close we are, literally by inches. And VR is the only thing that actually gives us that comparable experience between the two. Monitors are great, no matter how big they are, but they're just never going to be able to satisfy that part of things.
That's interesting you say that. One of the things we had to readjust the gamers to do, and again, we were learning, right? This is 2010 onwards. One of the big things that you have to do in motorsport is, as my old racing instructor used to say, stretch your eyes. You're not looking at where you are now, you're looking a long way in the distance, and you've got to feel where you are, basically. You've got to stretch your eyes. And screens don't allow you to do that. So we started looking at eye tracking technology even back then, 2012, something like that. And we were trying to teach the gamers to stop looking that short distance in front and get their eyes out there. So in that respect, VR sort of jumps that issue by having that perception of depth and everything else in there.
Yeah.
I have some stats on which I'm going to talk about, but I also want to touch base. You're a motorcycle champion. How do you do VR sim in motorcycle?
Well, it's not that simple because on the market right now, there has been some product, but not like to the effect for a mass adoption. But I'm definitely looking, to figure that part out because we have more and more interested. Like Darren was saying, with COVID, sim racing with cars exploded, and now with motorcycles following suit. So because I come from that world, I have all of the connection and the networking opportunity within the real racing world. And we are just waiting. So we are definitely looking forward to make that happen because I believe the VR will be the only option for motorcycle sim racing. Because if you think about it, we cannot have a motorcycle that gives you the feeling that you sit on it, like that you do a 150-foot triple jump. It's not possible, to get that as a feeling. But I think with the VR technology, that's going to change because you can now trick your brain to be able to at least imagine, the way you're doing it is a real jump.
I remember doing a corporate gig for Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and we did have this VR project that we had, convinced them to do. And in between the events, they're like, "Can we try something else?" And we said, okay, well, there's a plank experience if you want to try. And like we've seen some bankers on the floor thinking that they're falling from, 20-story building because that early plank experience was pretty brutal. So speaking of your, I think, point, definitely VR could, I think, improve the feeling of a big jump on a motorcycle. I have some stats in here. Obviously, that's not based on, actual, data measuring machinery or AI, but, my own interpretation of, how good I was using VR versus monitor. And trust me, I forced myself to use monitor. I hated every minute of it. And you can tell from the incidents that I have, experienced, it's exponentially different. And here's the lap of that VR headset if you guys want to watch it later on. I also want to touch base a little bit, like we talk about headsets, AWEs, I want to say 95 to 98% about, headset technology, AR, VR. What about XR? I mean, considering you as, putting a sim driver into a race car, which is without a headset, what about the future of mobility without the headsets?
Well, I came here to learn as well as to sit on this panel, and some of the stuff you showed me about what's happening, I think you've got a slide in terms of windscreens. It was absolutely fascinating to me because coming to this conference, I thought that this is all about putting the headsets on, but actually there's so much more to it, and I think it's a huge benefit. And what we do know about motorsport is that technology does move into road cars eventually, and I think some of the stuff that you're going to show, having come from an automotive background as well as a motorsport one, I think is really interesting. So you use it as a driver training tool on track, but one of the things that we always talked about in terms of simulators was driver training, especially in countries where there isn't the infrastructure to do that. There's not even a driving test, is to try and improve the driver skills via simulation before people are allowed out on the roads. And I think some of the technology that's coming down the line for when you're sat in your car but is on the windscreen is complete game changing in that respect from a performance point of view for motorsport, but also a safety point of view for on the road.
Yeah.
I think there's a big gap right now in between actively communicative and passively communicative. And what I mean by that is just on a GT car so I race Caymans, and there are 250 inputs that I can see from a data perspective, from a steering angle to brake pressure to you name it. The problem is that it always comes after my session. And to be able to use that data becomes passive, right? I now get to see what I did, but there's sometimes video overlay and that works. However, things like this, where you can see things on the screen in real time and and respond to what my last lap was and where I took my turn and what my brake pressure was, what my tires were at, is incredibly helpful. Because I don't care how smart, unless you're a Formula One driver, if you're doing 20 laps on a 20-turn course, over that time, you're not going to remember how you did a specific turn by inches, but data can, right? And data to me is really interesting if you can use it at that moment. And so things like these screens make that data available to us. VR makes it available to us. That's missing right now in the motorsport world.
Yeah, let's show what this screen does. And technically, we reached out to Wayray. We haven't heard from them, but I'm nowhere near close to any relationship with them. I'm not promoting them, but it seems like this is one of the products that is out there that is kind of getting to where we're talking about. I also want to touch base. We had this conversation during lunch about experiences that are novelty versus necessity. I think one of the main issues in the XR industry is how technology is not really getting there fast enough. We talked about Euphoria versus web browser-based AR. I wasn't able to sell any experience to any of my corporate clients because they had to download an app before even 8-Wall existed. So that being said, I mean, experiences like this that actually does help with, data and, versus the bottom corner experience that you're looking at is the new Mini experience where you just drive your car in a digital world. I mean, the differences between, I think, these experiences are really whether it's needed or whether it's luxury. What are your takes on
this? Was the video, the top right here. This is the one I was most interested in. You know, we talk about gamification of
Yes.
Yep.
whatever it might be, learning, teaching someone. I mean, that to me is, you know, someone that's grown up driving around on a virtual racing line like the one
That's
there.
technically embedded in any kind of game.
Yeah,
Right?
that would shortcut someone's learning time on track, but exponentially in terms of what they could do, because, as you say, they're getting real-time feedback on where they should be, rather than someone like this guy shouting in your ear and telling you you're in the wrong place,
knocking
or
someone's helmet.
working it out
We're about to hit a
afterwards.
wall.
Or working out afterwards. So I think that for our industry is transformative if that comes out, and then it isn't going to be what it looks like there in terms of what happens on the road going forward, but we will learn as an industry from what happens in motorsport, and that will get trickled down into the automotive industry. So for me, that's the best thing I've seen since I've been here.
What is very interesting, I think, is that the connection that comes from the gaming world, because that's what you experience when you play a racing game. You have all that data in real life on the game, and now, you know, again, we are taking the digital experience and then potentially started to apply on a windshield of a car. So, you know, learning from that, and then, you know, getting to that point and eventually put it for mass adoption in any car. It's very interesting.
Yeah, Williams just did a thing recently. I don't know if anyone saw it. We haven't actually talked about this. We've had a great chat, by the way. We should have videoed our lunch today and our dinner last night. Maybe not the dinner last night, actually.
Dinner might be a little too much.
There'd have been a little bit too much bleeping out of some words. But Williams did a recent thing with a beer brand where they pitched old racing drivers in their old cars virtually against a current racing driver, Logan Sargent, American Formula One driver, in his car, and tried to sort of merge again the two worlds of doing that. But what's interesting, those people that aren't close to Formula One, is that this whole testing in the virtual world is happening at the highest level now.
Yes.
So if you watch Formula One, 2 cars on track by team, back at the factory, normally in the UK, certainly back in Europe, there's another team of people in a virtual car, in a real simulator that they're spending huge amounts of money on. So 20 years ago, they'd just be going round on a track for real, round and round and round, burning even more fuel, burning even more tyres up. Now, when Max Verstappen finishes his session in Las Vegas, for example, they will have a conversation with the factory back at base. He goes off, does his PR stuff. That's when that team start working on the virtual car to improve the real car in that respect. So the full crossover of those two spaces, one informing the other, and as you were saying, the data having to be the same in both places to make sure that those two things meet in the middle and work in terms of the performance increases that they're trying to...
So are you saying Williams actually did something good?
You've got it.
Thank you. I'll be here all week.
You've got a short memory. Come on, you know, one of the most winningest teams in Formula One history.
Not right now. You know,
I'm looking for the next American Formula One driver, by the way.
You're saying Logan's not great?
He's lovely. He's really nice. I was at that shoot. It was a beer shoot, so I was there. Right, there was cars and beer.
We can negotiate that later. I think it's interesting we're talking about gaming and the terminology of gaming for this versus the sport. To me, the application of gaming and motorsports is so tied together versus what one considered gaming if it's...
Now it is, but
no, I know.
Even 10 years ago, it was...
That's my point, right? That they were two different things, and now they are so intertwined with reality that it's one of the sports that you can game, but actually be really on the track with somebody else in the real world.
Yep.
That doesn't exist in a lot of other games, right? Imagine being a driver with Formula One.
So there's a live project, I'm led to believe, by EA to have what has been called for, as long as I've been involved, the dream of everyone, which is the 21st car. So there's 20 cars on the grid in Formula One at the moment, and the dream of everyone, there's just some technical issues in the way and some legal issues in the way, is that we can put our headsets on and we can be the 21st car and race against them at the Miami Grand Prix live.
Wow. And I can see Torsten definitely challenging Max quite heavily on that one.
Maybe he's at the back with Logan, but yeah.
I would definitely hit him on purpose.
Well, we have 9 minutes left, and I want to leave some room for questions. I still want to talk about, one of the main issues at motorsports, and I want to kind of touch base on how actually the new AR passed through technology. And I've always said it since day one, is like as soon as a headset that merges AR and VR is going to be the next thing. And it's coming. I mean, Apple Vision Pro currently is, doing that really well, even though Meta has been doing that for a little while as well. But I want to ask everyone, what's wrong with this photo? There's probably around, $150 million worth of Ferraris on that track. And, the only people that are on this side of the track is the family members of the drivers. The track is empty. Nobody's watching it. What's wrong with this? For the last 3 months, we had major leagues coming into Circuit of the Americas, the country's only F1 grade, purposeful built track. And these men and women, they raced in 150-degree, temperatures in their cars for no spectators. So, interesting enough, the young generation currently doesn't really care. This is what I found online.
What do you think this man does as a job?
Boat driver.
Can we get some audio?
Boat driver. Where'd you get that from? Is it the outfit?
Yeah, the outfit.
The outfit. Any ideas?
I have no clue.
Lawyery?
I can see that, yeah.
I guess he's a student.
By the way, the
quite
photo
chill.
is an
Yeah,
F1
he's
driver.
fit. Tommy Hilfiger, he doesn't have that much muscle. I don't know. He could be a scammer.
Be some kind of businessman.
Or a waiter.
Tennis player.
Where'd you get that from?
He's dressed quite posh.
Something in finance.
Finance. Trust fund. 6'5", blue eyes. What about this one?
No guesses.
No guess.
I don't know where the trainers are from.
Yuki.
No brand
The
necklace.
social worker.
School worker, social networker.
So the point is, Netflix Drive to Survive, changed the fandom, and we have a massive issue. I think for the last 20 years, a lot of brands are looking at motorsports as an expense versus a real connection between fans and drivers and talented people that are in the market for all of this. This is what Netflix has done. With Drive to Survive, pushing content out there, there's 450,000 minimum people at any track, any given time, at any Grand Prix. So how do we fix this? How do we actually help the future of motorsports with content consumption? And I want to touch base a little bit. I mean, you're a race car driver. You have some, sponsorship, and you have a project coming up. And what was the core base of your sponsors to kind of sponsor that project?
Yeah, I mean, so the secret actually is I've only been doing this for 2.5 years, and I am part of the Netflix effect because I watched Drive to Survive, and I stupidly said I can do that. I didn't know how. I figured it out, but we all look for sponsorships in different ways. The reality is that it's storytelling, and we can't lose sight of what storytelling is inside of anything we do that we want money for, right? It's not about followers. You can actually have very little followers and still get great sponsorship if you have the ability to tell a story. It's not lost on me that the guy in the wheelchair gets to tell a really good story. Right? I have a different story than somebody else does, but we all have good stories. I think what VR and all this does is it actually, and what Netflix did was it made people real behind the scenes, not just a singular driver. Right? It was that there are stories behind this, that there's crew behind you, that more goes into it than just I can drive fast on a highway. Right? Because actually everything you do on the highway is the exact opposite that you should be doing on a track. So to me, this type of storytelling will actually open the door for a lot of people to get different types of sponsorships because they can tell different stories and they can get it out easier in more of an ecosystem. So instead of just blasting out a commercial, it's how are you telling those stories more in depth? And now you guys get to actually see how I drive in my car. Right? So I have a 360 camera that's sitting always on the passenger side, so that not only can you watch me race, but you can actually look down and see my hand controls, see how I'm sitting in the car, and people can replicate that are also in chairs. But you can do the same thing for able-bodied people too. Right? That's interesting. You can't really do that right now. Well, a couple of years ago. But now the technology is affordable because the GoPro Max costs $400.
Yep.
Right? And that opens the door to a whole lot more people to tell different types of stories.
And we have, obviously the godfather of stories here. And, I think you've also created multiple leagues that, leads into these kind of stories. As far as content, the ROI we kept talking about, and I think, Darren, you can kind of touch base on that, dealing with, large corporations with innovative ideas. Most of the corporations that are looking to sponsor a talent, they're looking at it as ROI. And ROI is usually like, how many eyes are actually looking at my logo on top of that car? I think, the new generation of headsets, especially the F1 TV, kind of improved the consumption a little bit, especially with the live data and live feed that's coming in from the F1 itself, being able to transfer yourself into your favorite driver's camera feed and all that stuff. So, did you see any impact on, decision making from a corporate side to be a part of this ecosystem?
Well, I think, and again, you're going to show it here, is the way that people are consuming the sport has completely changed. So you've got everything from the fact, I saw a stat the other day that 38% of people that watch the Netflix show have never seen a Formula One race. So you've got the real casual fans. Then you've got the complete geeks, right? And by the way, one of those is my 13-year-old daughter, who has her laptop, who has the screen, she has her iPad and her phone to make sure she understands what's happening. She can tell you when the next pit stop's going to happen, right? So you've got to cater for all of that audience. So someone might be a real casual fan and they want to see what...
Talking about this.
Yeah, but that's not quite her setup, but I guess she's going to get there by the time she's 16. Or she'd probably wear a headset with some of your technology on it. But yeah, I think you've got to cater for both of those audiences. And I think that the immersive way that, as we talked about before, data plays such a big part in Formula One and motorsport in general, it lends itself perfectly to be the forerunner of other sports. And we're seeing the proliferation of gambling in sport and spot gambling. To have as much data as you possibly can in the same place is really important. I like a bet on a Formula One race, but I'm data poor compared to my 13-year-old stepdaughter. So there's got to be a way of improving that going forward.
Have you had any issues in the industry as far as running a women esports league, finding sponsors because women?
No, actually, like for us, it's been very successful because we really moved in at the right moment, and we've done it in a way to be very authentic. So everything that we do is for women by women. So therefore, sponsors are looking for those kind of engagement. But the key, beside my championship and our company championship, but the industry as a whole is looking for that interactivity. Like more you can be interactive with the brand, more a brand is going to be interested in whatever is the project that you're trying to show to them. So for us, like linking the digital world with the in real life world, basically copying what Darren did, for the Gran Turismo movie, but doing it just for women, it became something the company looked at it and said, wait, this is actually very authentic, it's real. It's like what people, are seeking to experience. And because it was all digital and interactive, it worked. So it works in that way.
Yeah, and I think, young generation really enjoys, bringing in, social aspect to it as well. Twitch, is massive in between gamers, and, being able to, share layouts and things like that. This is actually from a multi-viewer application that a bunch of F1 lover developers actually developed open source and put it out there to the world for people to be able to watch the F1 experience, outside of the F1 app itself, which allows you to actually view this in multi-channel. And I think, the next setup that I am going to show that we've been working on in-house at the office is quite interesting, which merges almost everything that we've talked about currently into a single device, which is a pass-through headset. So, looking from an entertainment perspective, if you have a set setup like this, where you can socialize with your people that you like to consume this type of content, watch your favorite motorsports film. At the same time, give an opportunity for other brands that are involved within that content itself to kind of push their content through. I'm thinking this could become the birth child of Netflix and YouTube and Twitch and kind of everything kind of combined. Moving forward, in a real life racing scenario, you have this entire setup where you see a full data, where we talked about the importance of data and people, the way they want to consume content, being able to see a track map, and then switch to a game mode with the 21st driver. If you wanted to drive in that same event and you want to switch from AR to VR, you have a single headset that allows you to do all of this stuff. So I'm excited about XR's involvement in motorsports, and I think a lot of you over here might be familiar, might not be, but definitely I think there's an immense amount of potential where, as developers and creators and product developers, we really need to start looking into meaningful experiences that actually connects the multiple different categories together. Anything, last remarks that you want to add before I know we're out of time, but I want to give some time for questions, but
I mean, it's been fantastic. I think the times is right. So if anybody out here in the audience, is thinking about this, just go for it, because the time is right.
Yep. And Corbin, that's your next project, by the way. All right, cool. Any questions? I don't know if you have any time, but please feel free to ask any questions while we have these very important people here coming all the way from London and Italy and Connecticut.
Before that, I'm a fanboy a little bit. My name is Mike Jones. I'm with Silicon Valley Virtual Reality at BrainFizz VR. Mr. Cox, I've waited almost 15 years to talk to you.
Can you get a little closer to the microphone?
When you started working in the very early days, 2005, 2006, training drivers in a game, I picked up on that when everybody else was laughing on you. And I started working in Simbin, and Mikkel was nice enough to provide me technical support. I'm an ex-professional road racer, Formula One sidecars. I knocked down a championship in 2008. Half of that trophy belongs to you, okay?
That requires a selfie right now, so let's get together.
I want to talk to you all later, because we trained a female driver who had never set foot on a racetrack before. She knocked down a championship.
Yes.
Okay? Because of that. With that said, at the rate things are going, do you see us being able to have a Drive to Survive type of audition series for the general public, where general people use home simulators using consumer-grade equipment, and their stories are followed as they get into an F1 style, F3000 style, F4 style series, straight from the home into the cockpit and winning a championship?
I think there's a movie called Gran Turismo that's about that. What do you think?
I've heard it's okay.
Yeah. I hear the Orlando Bloom character is a real dick.
Yeah. I think that there was a lot of innovations in that space, so thank you for your interest and the questions. It wasn't just that we were using gaming, because you think back in 2008, no one was using gaming to market anything, right? I mean, I remember some of the things that we were trying to get over to get this signed off, and they're like, people who buy PlayStations aren't going to buy cars, so why are we marketing as a car company to gamers? But the other thing we did was the sign-off. The whole reason I got it signed off wasn't because it was a motorsport program, it was because it was a TV show. So exactly that. It was the whole reality TV show back in 2008, and it was supposed to be one and done. We were supposed to prove the point that you've just made, which is, yes, that can be done. People didn't realize it. And it was so successful that we went on to do it for 10 years. So, yeah, I think long may that continue. People like Stefy are changing the format, making it different, making it more inclusive in a different way. Something I'm very passionate about in terms of getting more females into motorsport. So, yeah, I think the more those stories are being told, as you discussed, I think is critical to the technology, but also for our sport.
I think a big thing too, though, so I'm a brand and marketing guy, is brands have a really hard time releasing control over the content, and they're so tied to their brand guidelines that the ability for me to have a 360 in my car means that it's unfiltered. So Pennzoil, bless their heart, that works with me, they have to know that my brand is always going to be my brand, and they're going to have to release that. But then if you want that to be bigger and you want brands to come to support that, they need to be able to release control over their brand image to a degree. There's still always filter with bad words, but that's going to be one of the hardest parts, right? Releasing control over your brand image and understanding that you're supporting reality versus containing reality.
And I'm getting ready to step back into that. You mentioned that you're getting into the social media side of things, coming from the pro racer side. I was very good at landing sponsorship as a pro racer. I learned that it's often they will not say no. They'll give you something. All you have to do is ask. Well, I'm turning 52 in about 2 weeks. I bought a drift missile that I'm building to enter Formula Drift competition, coming out of retirement, and I'm going to have to go play the sponsorship game and the social media game as an aging Gen Xer. So I feel it for you. Hey, anybody wants to put a name on my car? How you doing? How you doing? I'm right here. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I want to talk to you later.
Any other questions? All right, one more.
Hi there. My name is Alejandro Mendoza. I lead extended and virtual reality implementation at a space tech startup. First of all, thank you so much for this panel. This was super interesting. We talked on LinkedIn before this, actually. But like entertainment aside, like GT Academy aside, Netflix really opened up the door for F1. But I think content consumption in a VR 180 or even VR 360 sense, as you noted you're doing in your car, kind of enables immersion on a different level, but also I think enabling drivers to visualize the heart-pounding effects of driving. Do you guys see that kind of extending in the future into other aspects such as motorcycle racing? Because as a motorcycle rider myself, I think about the implications of VR for training future motorcyclists for the road, for safety, but also for racing. But I don't see a lot in that space, and if you want to, I'd love to build it with you.
Well, I take this one.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. Anything that can help get people to be better skilled in riding, like a motorcycle, is 100% a way to go. Also, between motorcycle and also car, like the DMV, here in the US, it would be a great opportunity to continue to bring those tools there so people can actually do laps and laps and laps and do tries before even going onto a motorcycle in a car. So it's the difficult part is just like convincing the people that they have not experienced to jump and then be able to adopt the VR. But we are there and it's happening.
I think it comes to a point when, like being able to obtain a car simulator versus a motorcycle simulator, like you can easily buy a real motorcycle and go out there versus trying to replicate the movements and everything that you need to do to control a motorcycle. So there's a balance there as well, right?
Mm-hmm. A balance in economic cost, but not necessarily like potential injury.
Correct.
Do you see perhaps... Going back to the automotive side, do you see mixed format seasons becoming a thing, possibly as extension of GT Academy, saying we have...
For motorcycling?
Or for automotive. So do we have, or do you see the potential for a motorsport series to incorporate both esports events and real-life events?
Yes, it's already happening.
In one season?
Yeah, you put the screen to...
Yes, so beside the screen to speed, the movement and events that we are doing, it's already happening. Like right now, this past weekend, there were the 24-hour Le Mans. You could race 24-hour Le Mans digitally. and then have, like the race right there. And that happened on site. So people can go there on site and compete in the digital world while the event was happening in real life.
And in fact, last year, an organizer in Europe, they forced the real drivers to compete in the esports competition
in
the same weekend, and they scored points for the real championship by doing. So yeah, everyone's trying to, let's call it MR, mixed reality. That's what they're trying to do.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for all your questions.
You're welcome.
We appreciate all of you for coming, and I want to thank, I know this industry has been really, really interestingly slow growing, and I know all of you are pushing the limits of creativity and devotion to technological advancements. Thank you for that, and I want to thank the AW team for having us here, especially Sonia. Thank you, bottom of my heart, for taking care of all of us and herding all of us over here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love this.